I've been working fire lookouts for 23 seasons, and in all that time, I've never seen smoke move the way it did yesterday. The morning had started like any other at Thistle Peak. August heat had settled over the Kootenai-Nez National Forest like a wool blanket, the kind of dry heat that turns pine needles to kindling. From my glass-walled cabin, perched atop a 60-foot steel tower, I could see nothing but wilderness in every direction, endless green broken only by jagged ridgelines and the distant silver thread of the Snake River. The nearest human being was Dale at Black Ridge Lookout 18 miles away. Just the way I like it. I'd completed my morning ritual, coffee brewed in my ancient percolator, equipment check, weather readings, and the first radio check-in of the day. Thistle Peak to dispatch, morning report. Clear skies, temperature 78 degrees and climbing, wind east at 12 knots. No smoke sightings, over. The radio crackled. Copy that, Thistle Peak. Forecast says we're looking at another scorcher. Stay cool up there, Leland. By noon, the temperature gauge read 96 degrees, and the vast panorama was shimmering in the heat haze. That's when I noticed it. A thin column of smoke rising about 17 miles southeast, near the Bitterroot Divide. Nothing unusual in itself. August means fire, and spotting them early is exactly what I'm paid for. I reached for my Osborne firefinder, lined up the crosshairs with the smoke column, and recorded the azimuth, 142 degrees. I picked up the radio to report it, but something made me pause. The smoke was moving. Not dispersing with the wind, like smoke should. Moving, laterally. Northwest, to be precise, which made no sense given the easterly wind that had been constant all morning. I adjusted my glasses and looked again. The column was distinct, dark against the lighter haze of the horizon, and it was definitely moving northwest, perpendicular to the wind, at a steady pace that reminded me of something I couldn't quite place, something unsettling. Must be a dust devil under it, I muttered to myself, the sound of my own voice strangely reassuring in the silence. But there was no dust devil tall enough to move a smoke column that rose at least 1,000 feet. I pressed the radio button. Thistle Peak to Black Ridge. Dale, you copy? After a moment of static, Dale's gravelly voice came through. Black Ridge here. What have you got, Leland? I'm tracking a smoke column at bearing 142 from my position. Can you get a cross bearing? Will do. Give me a few. I tried another channel. Thistle Peak to Crow's Nest. Sarah, you reading me? Sarah's response was immediate. Loud and clear, Thistle. What happening? I've got a smoke column southeast of my position I'm trying to triangulate. Dale's already on it, but a third bearing would help. No problem. I'll take a look and call back. I returned to my observation window. The column continued its unnatural progress, now having moved about a mile from its origin point. Its base remained fixed, but the column itself was bending, stretching like a dark arm reaching across the landscape. The movement had a jerky, stiff quality to it, like a stick figure in an old animation. Wrong. It looked wrong. The radio crackled again. Black Ridge to Thistle Peak. I've got your smoke at bearing 097 from my position. Looks like a small one, probably lightning struck from last night's dry storm. I frowned. If Dale was seeing the smoke at 097 and I was seeing it at 142, the triangulation would put it. I plotted the bearings on my map. The location made sense, a remote section where lightning had been reported. What didn't make sense was the movement. Are you seeing any unusual movement with that smoke, Dale? Over. There was a pause. Negative. Columns rising straight. Some eastward drift with the wind. Normal behavior. Why? I hesitated. If I told him I was seeing smoke move against the wind like some kind of living thing, he'd think the isolation had finally gotten to me. Just checking. There's some unusual wind patterns today. Keep an eye on it. Will do. Black Ridge out. I turned back to the window, a chill running down my spine despite the heat pouring through the glass. The smoke column had stopped moving. It now stood perfectly still, rising straight up as if it had never moved at all, as if the laws of physics had been momentarily suspended and then remembered. And then, as I watched, it slowly began to turn, like the head of a snake sensing prey, not dispersing or shifting with air currents, turning, with precision, with purpose. It was turning toward Thistle Peak, toward me. I stood frozen at the window, my hand still gripping the Osborne fire finder. The temperature gauge on the wall read 96 degrees, but a chill ran through me as I watched the smoke column's deliberate pivot. 23 seasons in the lookout service had taught me that smoke follows certain unbreakable rules. It doesn't turn with purpose. It doesn't move against the wind. And it sure as hell doesn't seem to look back at you. My training took over, pushing down the unease. I needed another set of eyes on this. I grabbed the radio, my lifeline to the outside world. Black Ridge, this is Thistle Peak, over. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. A few seconds of static, then Dale's familiar drawl crackled through. Go ahead, Thistle. I've got a smoke column near the Bitterroot Divide. Coordinates 47th, 28, 15 north, 115, 34, 22 west. Can you get a bearing? Copy that. Hold one. The radio fell silent. I went back to the window, tracking the column through my binoculars. It had started moving again, but now it was coming straight from my tower, crawling across the land with that same unnatural, purposeful crawl. No smoke I'd ever known moved like that. Thistle, Black Ridge, I've got your smoke, Dale's voice cut through my focus. But it's moving due east toward the state line, not northwest like you said. I lowered my binoculars, frowning. That's impossible. I'm looking right at it. It's moving straight west, directly toward me. Negative, Thistle. I have clear eyes on it. It's moving east with the wind. You sure your compass is okay? Before I could reply, the radio crackled again. Thistle Peak, this is Crow's Nest, over. Sarah's voice sounded tight, strained. Go ahead, Crow's Nest. I see that smoke column too, but it's acting strange. From here it's moving directly south, deeper into the trees, against the wind. A heavy silence hung over the radio. The three of us formed a roughly equal triangle across the mountains, each lookout post maybe 18 or 20 miles apart. We were all veterans. We all knew our equipment. What we were describing was impossible under any rules I knew. One of us has got it wrong, Dale finally said flatly. Smoke can't move in 3 different directions. My gear is fine, Sarah insisted, a note of defense in her voice. Calibrated everything yesterday. Mine too, I added, though I started feeling a nagging doubt. Let's try to pin it down. Give me your lines. We spent the next 20 minutes swapping positions, bearings, and what we saw. The numbers just didn't add up. If our sightings were right, this smoke existed in 3 places at the same time, heading 3 different ways. The logical part of my mind screamed it couldn't be happening. Look, Dale said, his patience sounding thin. Someone's instrument is fried. Or it's the heat haze playing us. Seen it warp things before. No, Sarah cut in sharply. This isn't a trick of the heat. It's moving, deliberately. That's exactly what I'm seeing, I said, a fresh chill hitting me despite the oven-hot cabin. But there's something bigger, something none of us has said out loud. What's that? Dale asked. If we're all right and this thing can move 3 ways at once, there's one key difference. You both see it moving away from your lookouts. I'm the only one who sees it headed straight for one, straight for mine. The silence this time felt endless. When Sarah finally spoke again, her voice was a near whisper. Leland, what do you think it is? The question hung heavy. I stared at the approaching column, now close enough to notice what I'd missed. Real smoke billows, thins out, fades at the edges. This stuff kept a solid shape. Its edges were too sharp. Its color was wrong, too. Not the gray-white of wood smoke or black of an oil fire, but some murky in-between, unnaturally thick. I don't know, I admitted, my throat tight. But I don't think it's smoke anymore, not really. Jesus, Tucker, listen to yourself, Dale said, a clear edge of worry in his voice now. You talking like it's alive or something. As if Dale's words triggered it, the column suddenly sped up, gobbling the distance between it and the foot of my mountain way too fast. It's coming faster. My mouth felt dry as dust. A lot faster. Leland. Sarah's voice was sharp now, urgent. Maybe you need to go. Take the truck and... Her voice drowned in a harsh burst of static. Then the line went dead. Sarah? Dale? I tried the radio again, twisting the knobs, checking the wire. Nothing but the empty, low hiss of dead air. Outside, the thing that wasn't smoke had reached the trees at Thistle Peak's base. It paused there, swaying slightly, like it was gathering itself. Then it started climbing. I watched, transfixed, as it began climbing the mountain. Nothing I'd ever seen in my 23 seasons rose through the air like this, with purpose, with intent. My hands shook as I grabbed my binoculars, twisting the dials to get a clearer view. Looking through the lenses, the wrongness became even starker. Real smoke is thin, wispy, bending as breezes push it. This was different. Thick and solid-looking, it held its column shape steady despite the light breeze that should have broken it apart. Its texture was off as well. Instead of fine, drifting ash, it seemed to swirl deep within itself, like countless dark particles turning and churning inside an invisible tube. Dale, do you copy? I tried the radio again, my voice tight with strain. The smoke is climbing up Thistle Peak. It's moving up the goddamn mountain itself. Only static answered, crackling with broken pieces of words I couldn't make sense of. Sarah, Crow's Nest, do you read me? I clicked to another channel. More static hissed, then Sarah's voice faded in and out, weak and distant. Lost it. Can't see the column. Interference. Then dead silence. I put the radio down and rushed back to the windows. The thing had already covered nearly a third of the mountainside, climbing with that same jerky beat, like it was taking careful, deliberate steps. It wasn't smoothly rising like heat lifts normal smoke. No, it lunged upward in short bursts, paused, then jerked forward again, like something walking, something hurt but driven. The afternoon sunlight was getting weak. In another hour, maybe less, twilight would fall, and after that the whole forest would be wrapped in night. The idea of meeting this thing in the dark sent an icy shiver up my spine. I'm a grounded man. I believe every strange thing has a scientific reason behind it. Heat waves, dust twisters, weird clouds. I've seen plenty of odd sky stuff that could fool someone who didn't know better. But this defied everything nature should allow. This wasn't just smoke drifting. This was something using smoke maybe as a disguise, a body. Through the binoculars, I noticed something new. As it climbed higher, it looked more defined, more solid. The swirling particles inside seemed to pull tighter together, getting more organized. It was like it was gathering strength, getting ready. Ready for what? The thought dried my mouth. Frantically, I spun the radio knob through every channel. This is Thistle Peak Lookout. Emergency. I repeat, emergency. Something is closing on my position. I need immediate assist. A blast of static ripped through the speaker, so loud and sharp the handset tumbled from my grip. When I snatched it back up, the line was utterly dead. Outside, the thing had reached a rocky ledge about halfway up the mountain. It settled there, the whole dark bulk seeming to pull in tight, then swell out. The movement looked like breathing, a slow draw in, then a slower push out. I stopped breathing myself as I watched it. The sun slipped lower, dragging long shadows over the mountain. In the soft, late-day light, the column looked pitch black now, swallowing the golden glow instead of catching it. Its edges became razor-sharp. It started climbing again, faster this time, moving smoothly. The jerky, limping motion was gone, replaced by a flowing, purposeful climb that was somehow far worse. 3/4 of the way up Thistle Peak, it halted once more. The entire column sucked inward, compacting itself, getting thicker, blacker. Then, just as the first dark purples of evening brushed the sky, it did something I still can't find words for. It unraveled. Not the slow spread of normal smoke. Unraveled, like a tightly wound coil of dark thread suddenly snapping loose. Within seconds, it faded completely into the evening air, gone without a sign it ever existed. I stood frozen, sweeping the mountainside frantically with my binoculars. Nothing. It vanished. But it hadn't pulled back. It hadn't retreated. I knew, with absolute cold certainty deep in my gut, that it was still coming. Still climbing. Just unseen now. Hiding in the thickening darkness, crawling towards my solitary tower on the peak. The radio stayed silent. The forest below blurred into shadow, and with a stomach-churning jolt, I understood that I was no longer the watcher on the mountain. I was the one being watched. Night fell like a shroud over Thistle Peak. The familiar comfort of darkness that had embraced me for 23 seasons now felt like a living thing, pressing against the glass walls of my lookout. I switched on my lantern, its glow creating a small island of light in the vast emptiness. The warm yellow circle did nothing to dispel the cold dread that had settled in my chest. I tried the radio again. Black Ridge, this is Thistle Peak. Do you copy? Dale? Anyone? Static crackled mockingly in reply, a white noise that seemed to pulse with a rhythm that sounded like breathing. Hours crawled by. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't even sit. I paced the 14-foot square of my cabin, binoculars in hand, scanning the impenetrable blackness beyond my windows. The logical part of my brain, the part that had guided me through blizzards, lightning storms, and wildfire evacuations, insisted this was all heat exhaustion, stress. Maybe I was sick. but logic was a frail shield against what I'd seen. That thing wasn't smoke. It moved with purpose. It climbed my mountain, and now it was out there, somewhere deep in the dark. A flicker of movement caught my eye around 2 in the morning. I froze mid-step, my breath stuck in my throat. Across from my position, on the barren ridge of Coldwater Peak, a stretch of exposed rock where nothing stood yesterday, a dark shape had appeared against the star-speckled sky. I raised my binoculars with shaking hands, twisting the focus wheel. What I saw drained every drop of warmth from my body. It was a lookout tower. My lookout tower. A perfect, dark, twisted duplicate of Thistle Peak Station stood on that ridge where I knew deep in my bones, there was nothing but bare rock and wind. The structure seemed built of something thick and somehow not quite solid. It seemed to move slightly, its edges shimmering like heat waves off scorching asphalt. The size and shape were dead on. The 60-foot steel legs, the square cabin perched on top, even the railing around the narrow catwalk. But it wasn't made of steel and wood and glass. It was made of that same thick, swirling darkness I'd seen in the column. As I stared, trapped by horror, bits of it seemed to come loose and drift for a second before knitting back together again, holding the awful shape despite a texture like flowing coal ash. And then I saw the light. From the empty window frame of that impossible tower, a faint cold glow pulsed. It beat in perfect time with my own lantern, a beckoning signal in the night. My knees gave out. I crashed into my chair, the binoculars clattering to the floor. This wasn't possible. This shattered every rule of the world I knew. This broke nature itself. The thing out there wasn't just copying my tower. It was studying me, learning from me. And now it was trying to draw me out. To what? I couldn't begin to guess. And that emptiness in the face of the unknown was maybe the worst terror of all. I grabbed the radio again, my fingers clumsy with cold fear. "Emergency! Emergency! This is Leland Tucker at Thistle Peak. Something is out here, something unnatural." The radio shrieked, a piercing howl that made me drop the handset. When I snatched it up again, there was nothing. Not even the hiss of static. When I forced my eyes back toward Coldwater Ridge, the light in the false tower flashed once, twice, and then winked out. A second later, my lantern sputtered and died. The darkness that poured into my cabin was total, an ancient nothing. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, couldn't see the walls, the floor. For a dizzying moment I felt untethered, lost in empty space. Silence pressed hard on my eardrums like a physical thing. Then, from outside, right outside, on the grated metal catwalk surrounding my cabin, I heard it. Not footsteps, nothing so simple, so human. It was a soft, dry, scraping sound, like fine sand being tipped slowly onto paper, like ash falling in a cold fireplace. A gentle, deliberate movement, inching its way around the edges of the only safe place I knew. The thing from the ridge was here, right at my door. I sat paralyzed in the pitch blackness, listening to that gentle, scraping whisper circling my cabin. Every soft shift and subtle scrape told me it was coming closer, testing the metal, exploring my space, waiting. The duplicate tower hadn't just been a lure to tempt me out. I understood with icy horror sinking into my core. It had been practice, learning the shape, and now the hunt was truly starting. Whatever this thing was, It had studied my shape, my purpose, my perch in the wilderness, and it was here to take my place. I remained frozen by the window, my eyes locked on the spot where the mimic tower had stood. But the ridge was empty now, just a dark silhouette against the night sky. The realization that the thing itself was no longer there didn't bring relief, only a suffocating certainty that it was closer. My fingers fumbled with the flashlight on the desk. The beam flickered weakly when I clicked it on, casting feeble light that barely reached the walls of my cabin. 23 seasons in the wilderness had taught me to always have backups, but in this moment, all my careful preparation felt meaningless. "This is Thistle Peak," I whispered into the dead radio, my voice rough with disuse and fear. "Emergency broadcast on all channels. Something's here. Something's..." The rest of my words died in my throat as a sound reached me from outside. Not wind, not the natural settling of the tower's metal frame. This was deliberate, a soft, dry shifting against the catwalk grating, like something heavy being dragged across sand. I switched off the flashlight immediately, plunging myself into darkness. The night pressed against the windows, absolute and impenetrable. I couldn't see my own hand in front of my face, but I felt the sweat beading cold on my forehead, running down between my shoulder blades. The scraping stopped. I held my breath, straining to hear over the thundering of my heart. 3 seconds. 5. 10. Nothing. Then a new sound emerged. A gentle, almost curious tapping against the metal door. Not knocking exactly. More like something testing the barrier, learning what it was made of. "Go away," I whispered, though I knew words were useless against whatever waited outside. The tapping paused, as if it had heard me. Then came a new sound that turned my blood to ice, a soft, sighing breath against the door's seam. Not wind, not anything natural. It was an almost perfect copy of a human breath, but wrong in ways I couldn't explain. Too dry, too hollow. Something was pressed against my door, listening. The floor beneath me seemed to tilt as I backed away, one shuffling step at a time, until my shoulders hit the far wall. My safe place had become a trap. 60 feet of empty air separated me from the ground. No way down except past whatever waited on the catwalk. A new sound now. The metal handle of the door turning, slowly, deliberately. The latch clicked as it opened. I hadn't locked it. In 23 seasons, I'd never once locked it. The door remained shut, but the handle finished its turn. Another pause, another testing, learning. Then the door began to swing in, a finger width of absolute darkness opening at its edge. No moonlight spilled through, no starlight, just a moving emptiness deeper than the darkness already around me. As the gap widened, the air in the cabin changed. It grew thicker, carrying the scent of cold ash and something else, something ancient and patient. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. I could only watch as the darkness outside pushed into my space, reaching toward me like probing fingers. Then came the voice, so close it might have been inside my own head. It wasn't speech, not really. It was the sound of shifting cinders, of wind through dead branches, of falling ash. But in that sound was a question, repeated with terrible intent. "Look out!" The darkness waited for my answer, patient as the mountains themselves. And in that moment, trapped between knowing what was happening and losing my mind, I realized I would never leave this tower, not as myself.